this week's Fantasy Stud Muffins.
So you get into the preseason, the off season, and now you're off.
And everything breaks.
Is it because we're recording after lunch?
Yes. We haven't got adjusted. The iPad had a very unhealthy.
Yeah, I tried to push it. So
well, speaking of Superman,
Speaking
of Superman,
quarterback,
the number one quarterback this week
of all time
was also the number one quarterback of this season, who was also the number one fantasy player of the entire year on almost all scoring formats, and that was Cameron Newton.
Oh, I thought that was Brian Hoyer.
No, close. He was 78. But Cam Newton just finished off an incredible year. He let a lot of people down on that Week 16 championship, but he came back in Week 17, redeemed himself, had 293 yards on only 21 completions. I don't even think he threw the ball 30 times, which is crazy. Had 2 touchdowns through the air, and then added 2 more on the ground.
No Jonathan Stewart, no Ted Ginn, didn't matter. Devin Funchess, big game.
Superman.
Cam Newton, taking care of business, 15-1.
And he will be the MVP.
Yeah, I think that's a foregone conclusion.
Not bold prediction of the week.
Some other guys that had huge days. Matt Stafford, since the offensive coordinator change up in Detroit, and they picked up Jim Bob Cooter. They've been great.
Everyone's favorite name.
They've been great up in Detroit. I believe they're 6-2 in their last 8 games.
6-2, 19-2 touchdown to interception ratio for Stafford over the last 8 games.
That's crazy. And
So
that's including a couple games without Calvin, really.
So looking forward, we don't have doubt about Cam Newton's fantasy value in 2016, but Matt Stafford, with this back half of the season, I know your career dislike of Matthew Stafford. What does this make you think about with him next year? I know you're not going to be drafting him high, but is he somebody that you're looking at?
Yes. Yeah. I will put him back on that list, assuming Calvin Johnson is back in Detroit. There's
very fair.
There's a salary cap situation up there. But I believe that Stafford has, over the last couple years, proven to be a much better real-life quarterback than we all thought he was. I mean, even last year, his touchdown-to-interception ratio was very good. I believe it was 2-1. And so you factor in what he did with the last half of this season, he's got to be on that list of late-round guys to look at.
All right. You also had Big Ben. Mike texted us during about halfway through the morning games and said Tom Brady and Big Ben are killing people's fantasy teams.
Well, just to preface, that would be again.
Yes, again, because they
week
both
16,
stunk in week
they already
16.
did that.
And Big Ben got the message and turned it around. It finished the game.
I paged him.
Yeah, you texted Martavis, who was on the bench and could be texted.
He's not allowed to have beepers there anymore.
Martavis.
Yeah, Martavis might be in our next section of Pooped in His Big Boy Pants.
And Ryan Tannehill came through with a big game against the Patriots. I haven't looked at the finishing numbers yet, but I was reading a tweet that said Ryan Tannehill's numbers are actually very close to last year's, even though it does not feel like that's even remotely possible. So I thought that was a funny little note.
You want to know what else is funny?
No, there's nothing funny about this.
There's nothing funny about the next guy.
The greatness.
On the great of the fantasy stud muffins quarterbacks. Everyone who played him won a championship. It is Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore, as the Washington Redskins came in and played their starters for a little while as they decimated the Dallas Cowboys, the garbage man Kellen Moore threw for 435 yards and 3 touchdowns. I believe he had several interceptions as well.
No disrespect to Kellen Moore, and in sincerity, you saw Jerry Jones came out and said he's a great he could be a really good number 2 quarterback, which I think we all agree, right? So no disrespect to him. This is the
wait. Jerry Jones said that?
Yes, he did.
So
he conceded there's no chance you're a starting quarterback.
That is rough for Kellen Moore.
I found it refreshing because everybody knows that.
No, but here's the thing. Jerry Jones, about Brandon Whedon, said he had one of the prettiest spirals that he's ever seen.
What is it, a death sentence? Is it the fantasy reaper at the GM position?
I think it's how much Jerry Jones pushes up his own guys. For him to actually admit that Kellen Moore is just the number 2, that means Jerry Jones thinks that he's trash.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, Moore, this is the type of game he'll be able to tell his grandkids about. I threw for 435 yards and 3 touchdowns in a program.
You know what this
Did you
is?
win? That's
Well,
what
that's
his
not
grandkids will say.
important.
Nah.
This game is. You know who this reminds me of? Matt Flynn.
Oh,
Sure does.
I'll bet
That's a Matt Flynn
Matt
game.
Flynn
Kellen
had
Moore-
7 in the last game of the year.
Kellen Moore might get some cash coming his way from some teams. Hey, remember that game where I threw 435 and 3?
Hey, it doesn't hurt. Shows that you might be a viable backup. And I'm not sure. Yeah, that's not the best job in football.
The backup.
The backup quarterback?
Matt,
great.
Matt Flynn is my personal hero. I have talked about this a lot.
Yes.
Nobody has had more signing bonuses in his career than Matt Flynn. He will go and sign with a team, and then the next week later, he's signing with another team because he's a rental piece.
He's on 4 payrolls right now.
It's amazing.
Is it, I was gonna say, and the Browns are paying 4 coaches still probably over the past 4 years.
A stat out of the AFC North. I forgot to throw this out when we were talking about coaches. The last 5 coaching changes in the AFC North, the Browns.
All 5. Wow, that makes sense. Marvin Lewis isn't gone. Yeah, that's crazy. All right, wide receivers that lit it up. Little known guy Antonio Brown, wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, had the best game since last week for him. 13 for 187 and a touchdown.
He's so good.
He's really good. Calvin Johnson is trying his best to prove he's worth that big cap number next year. 10 for 137 and a touchdown. The past 2 weeks have got to encourage fantasy owners without question about Calvin Johnson's ability to put up big numbers when healthy. Agree?
No.
No,
mean,
you don't?
I guess
he's had it.
I will say this. I agree that is a good sign, and that is, I guess with the spirit of what you're saying, it's an encouragement. So, yes, I still don't believe.
What was Calvin Johnson's rank this year?
Total in wide receivers?
Yeah.
13?
15.
Okay.
15, so.
Yeah, I'm just saying I'm not drafting him. You know, coming into this year, I think you guys gave me a bunch of crap when I had him outside of my top 5 on my
Yes, we did.
wide receivers, and I believe that
That must have been someone else.
you saw him. You saw him in kind of the middle of the year have just a real crap production, and then all of a sudden the last 2 games before his big contract needs, he goes off.
I wonder what he is second half of the year. He had those two
You know what?
games.
You know what I realized I just did wrong? There's 2 of us, and I could have widely denied that. we gave him that crap because there's 2 of us.
Yep.
And we could have made Jason look the fool
But now,
yet again.
But now, you can't.
So we jumped over Antonio Brown, who I believe had the 3rd best wide receiver yardage year of all time. And that's including multiple games of Michael Vick garbage.
where he did nothing with Michael Vick.
Absolute garbage. So Antonio Brown, as of the recording of this program, and you are listening to it in early January, Antonio Brown is my number 1 pick for next year.
Julio Jones deserves to be talked about in the wide receivers this week as well. He put up the 2nd most yards in NFL history this year and had an incredible year, 130-plus catches, really consistent on a team that was, second half flop of the year. Other guys that had big weeks, Brandon Marshall, again, 8 for 126 and a touchdown. Demaryius Thomas had a great week, 5 for 117 and a touchdown. Jordan Matthews.
Your start of the week.
Without yardage.
Yeah.
Just catching touchdowns.
Hey, that'll work. And Devontae Parker showed up, 5 for 106 and a touchdown. Looked good.
Yeah, I think that of this list, we have 3 guys that we just wanted to talk about real quick because we're looking to the future. You
Certainly.
got Devontae Parker, you got Devin Funchess, and you got Jamison Crowder. 3 rookies who finished up with really big games at the end. Devontae Parker showed this week, at least to me, showed that he is an elite level wide receiver talent. And the guy who really surprised me this week was Devin Funchess. I was not high on that signing. I thought we were getting Kelvin Benjamin 2.0 because while Kelvin, he's fine. I mean, I think he's a good wide receiver. I just don't think he's an elite Julio type guy where people are getting a little carried away, in my opinion. But I think next year that Devin Funchess is going to be a guy that you can probably get a little bit later, like 7th, 8th round wide receiver who
He'll go behind Kelvin Benjamin.
absolutely,
Oh, for sure.
So
absolutely,
you'll get him really late next year for
and
sure.
he might outproduce Kelvin. I mean, we're very early for that speculation, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Look, guys that you consider big for wide receivers in the NFL are normally 6'2". You got your Des Bryants and your guys that they've got the whole package and they're taller than your average wide receiver. And then you've got your giants, and Devin Funchess is 6'5". That's
big man.
You've got that on a high powered offense like Carolina. Ted Ginn is not going to stay fast forever. So I really like the idea of looking forward to Devin Funchess.
I was going to say, anytime you have wide receivers that are playing behind Jericho Cotchery, who retired 10 years ago, has got to be a good sign for some upside. So, and then Jamison Crowder, you really saw a year where he got peppered with targets when Jordan Reed was injured because he dominated the middle of the field, and now Crowder, he had a good game. We talked about him last week. I think I said, hey, I'd flex him in a 16-team league because, you thought he'd be out there for the whole game,
right,
even though other guys were benched. So Crowder is a guy with PPR potential in the future.
Oh, and he's interesting because was this a corner for Washington this year with Kirk Cousins, who
was this a what?
A turning point for their offense.
I gotcha.
Where Jordan Reed, full explosion out. Jordan Reed is going to be considered an elite level tight end next year.
As he should be, and he always has been when healthy.
Right. That's why there's Rule 86. You
Sure.
play him when he's healthy. Deshaun Jackson, in the limited time that he got to play, was very effective. I mean,
This brings up a water bet that we made this week.
That is true. Mike
and I both took Washington at home over Green Bay. Jason took Green Bay. I believe that Washington's been a different team since Deshaun Jackson and Jordan Reed has been, they've been healthy together. Kirk Cousins second half of the year. So I buy into the narrative that, you put some weapons around Cousins. He's very capable. He's still going to take a knee when you need a field goal every once in a while. But
that's why we love him.
That's why we love him.
Yeah, I'll take Aaron Rodgers over Kirk Cousins when
now,
it's on the line.
Kirk Cousins could have been mentioned in this too because he lit it up in the first half, 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think he was the number 8 quarterback of the week.
And we said bench him because what do? I mean, you don't start a guy you know is going to be sat down.
Who was sat down.
Sure.
And still had, number 8 quarterback of the week. So good job, Kirk.
Well, although if you were sitting there with Tom Brady or Kirk Cousins and you knew Kirk Cousins was going to be benched, man, that's rough.
Gross.
Running back, start of the week for Mike, Rashad Jennings.
I got one, fellas.
27 for 170 and a touchdown. Is that good?
Oh, I believe that's pretty good.
That's good. No, I was just checking. You guys obviously didn't know. That's a good line for a running back. Just give him the ball. He found a rhythm. They're not using a 4-headed hydra.
Their running back situation in New York will be very interesting to me.
Next year?
Yeah, Rashad.
Sure.
How old is Jennings? Is older.
Yes.
He's 30. So he'll be 31 going into next season. Will they keep him around? Andre Williams, you can't keep him.
No. One of the nice things about Jennings, similar to we've seen other older players who have succeeded later, is that he didn't really get the workload in the first half of his NFL career.
Well, you're going to have – Mike brings up a good point about Jennings simply because the philosophy – Coughlin was the one who had to keep rebuffing people saying, why aren't you giving the ball to one guy? Why aren't you giving it to 2 guys? Coughlin's gone. So we'll have somebody that comes in and we'll have an establishment of some sort of philosophy of the offense in the running back position. So that's a good point. Ronnie Hillman played great, 15 for 117 and a touchdown, had a big touchdown run. Jeremy Hill, 16 for 96 and a touchdown.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jeremy Hill.
And also Jeremy Hill scored from outside the one, which is something that you hadn't seen in a while.
The second half of the year from week 9 through 17, Jeremy Hill is the number 10 running back.
Because of all the touchdowns?
Right. I'm just saying. I feel like he is one of the biggest disappointments this year.
Because of all the yards and touchdowns.
I think.
Is that why?
Did we even have him on like a biggest letdown of the year, like the most overhyped list?
He is currently, well, I don't want to say. He's an option. He's on the ballot.
I mean, it's just amazing, though, because he hasn't
He's an RB2.
Yeah, he's an RB2.
And but he is a letdown. He's a huge letdown.
Yeah. If for what I was,
we talked about
personally was I was expecting a big year out of Jeremy Hill, and he was drafted as a back end RB1.
Yeah.
So
look, one thing you're not going to get from me this offseason on this show is a globalization of the fact that a guy finishes at a certain spot and that means he's that good for your team. because you have weeks where guys go insane. You have Eli Manning who
you've
throws
got,
6
like,
or 7 touchdowns. That game is an outlier. Nobody,
Sure.
Maybe they started Eli that game, but there are games that
That's the Deshaun Jackson rule. Deshaun Jackson,
he always
seemed like
finishes
every year
18
he
or
finished
19.
20 or Torrey Smith.
11 last year.
Yeah, but you can't rely on him on a week-to-week basis.
So-
He can win you games, he can lose you games. I get that. That being said, Jeremy Hill, very similar to
You could have started
Lamar
in
Miller.
the second half of the year. Yes.
Yeah, Lamar Miller, who was the number 5 running back, had great games and
Drove
had
me
pooped in your
crazy.
pants games.
Drove me
But I
crazy.
guess the thing I'm trying to point out is that their pooped games weren't as bad as we thought they were. They might have
Jeremy Hill's were.
Well, they had a couple, right? They had
No, he had a ton.
Did Jeremy Hill? How many games did he have under 5?
All right, I'm gonna spoil something for you. As of right now in the balloting, Jeremy Hill is the letdown of the year out of a group of 10 people. So that's the impact he's had on fantasy owners. Is they look at him and they say, huge letdown.
4. He had 4 games under 5 points in our half-point PPR scoring format.
And even this
bad.
glorious second half, 18, 4, 15, 9, 20.
Yeah.
So it's not something that you could rely on. What did you draft Jeremy Hill to be, a 1 or a 2? He's not either. That's
Well,
why he's the
he is
letdown
a
of the
2,
year.
but yeah.
No, he's not.
He's the 19th ranked running back on the year. That's a 2.
All right, you're right mathematically.
You're right with your facts.
I'll be honest. You said he was the 10 in the second half. I assumed he was
terrible,
outside the 2 in the first half. But when he scored, he was good. When he didn't score, he wasn't good.
Agreed. Yeah.
Okay.
It's like remember Michael Bush when he was on Chicago?
Yes, I do.
And you could use him in fantasy because all he would do is score.
Let me tell you
touchdowns.
this. Look
The
at this.
vulture.
This should tell you what's going on with Jeremy Hill. How many carries do you think he had this year?
Ooh.
Healthy all year. Played the
Okay.
whole season.
200. 215.
I'm going to go with 168.
Oh no, you're way off. Jason's really close.
Oh, he was in
200,
the 200s?
223. Do you know how many he had last year?
Probably about the
Less.
same.
222.
Yeah.
Less.
Okay? So he had one less last year, despite the fact he didn't really even get the reins last year until later. We expected that kind of production and usage. Last year, on the same amount of carries, 1,124 yards, 794 this year. 5.1 a carry, 3.6 a carry. Last year, 9 touchdowns. This year, he'd had 11.
Yep.
Yeah,
So-
and he even said, and you could see this, he was trying too hard this year. He would run like, he would just try to do things that instead of taking what was there, try to break out a big play and over
You know
and
who
over.
did that
hurt.
too? Was Lamar Miller last year.
Yeah.
In the beginning.
Yeah.
Where was it last year or 2 years ago where the Frank Gore hype, he's this great player. You come out, you try so hard, you lose your game. And maybe he's finding it. Is that what you're saying? You believe Jeremy Hill's finding it?
Yeah, I'm not too scared
Post
of drafting
hype.
Jeremy.
Post hype.
Yeah, post-hype sleeper would be Jeremy Hill this
Let's
next
start it already.
Oh, my goodness. There'll be time for that. All right, we talked enough about Jeremy Hill. Matt Forte, Timmy Hightower, who, by the way, was the number 2 running back over the last quarter of the season after not taking a carry since 2011. Jonathan Grimes and DeJuan Harris also had very good weeks this week.
DeJuan Harris did a full-on Big Salad impersonation of just voluming his way to a very productive fantasy day. And Forte is a guy I think to spend a little time on. I thought Langford would get the carries. They sent Matt Forte off with the fireworks and the explosion, and Langford didn't get the touches and just wasn't very good. But so that's probably the last game that Forte plays in a Chicago uniform. Would you agree?
Yep.
I agree. So
And
that
and
being
if
said,
if that is the last game that he's played in a Chicago uniform, Jeremy Langford over the second half of the season from week 9 on, what running back do you think he was?
Over the second half?
Second half, the whole half of the year.
Ooh.
12.
He was the number 6.
Yeah, he had a stretch there.
So
where he was
if
a
Forte's
monster.
out and gone,
I think that I don't think Langford's an elite level talent, but I think he's good, and if he's in a situation where he's getting the work, he will be.
You got to
solid.
remember, they're not going to have the same offensive coordinator next year.
true.
Adam Gase is going to be somewhere else, and so that's another variable. I don't want to overbank on it, but it's a good situation. I think Jeffrey will be back. We missed that news at the beginning. Beat writers in Chicago think he'll be back. We'll find out.
Yeah, they think we don't know that he'll be back.
No, I said that's
Yeah,
fake.
and Matt Forte, he's going to Dallas, isn't he?
I don't know.
I hope
think
not.
he's going to Dallas.
It seems whenever some situation seems that good, it doesn't happen.
Well, Forte is going to go somewhere where he can play, but he wants to contend. I'm sure he's going to have to search for a ring.
So you're going to go for like the team that was 4-12?
Yeah, the team without their superstar quarterback.
A team that's been 500 since the 90s.
It reminds me of the Spurs when they lost David Robinson and then they got to draft Tim Duncan with the number 1 pick.
I mean, you put Tony Romo on that team. You can even take Dez out with his injury. You put Tony Romo on that team, they're in the playoffs.
For sure. In that division?
Yeah, they're in the playoffs. There's no way they are not in the playoffs.
Tight ends. Tight ends that were stud muffins this week. Zach Ertz, start of the week for Mike. We loved him. Kobe Fleener, Delaney Walker, Will Tye, and Ben Watson. We'll get to the poops because my start of the week is he didn't pan out. So don't think we're just tooting our own horn on Zach Ertz.
Yeah.
I got it wrong with Travis Kelce.
Well, Ben Watson was my start of the week. So, 2 of the 3 of us.
That's fine. That's good. That's what I wanted to see.
And Kobe Fleener, I mean, we all saw that coming.
Oh, man. That was a
I don't even know.
beautiful pass.
Yeah.
That was Freeman, right?
I think that was Freeman.
It was
yes.
Freeman, yeah, it was.
Well, but Freeman came, then Lindley came in.
Yeah, Lindley came in.
And threw a touchdown to Andre Johnson.
Yeah, I remember watching the Fleener highlight, though. That was it was a good throw.
Yeah.
They're just ridiculous.
Something we can tell the grandkids about, Josh Freeman. One time I threw a really long... You know what? That's the wrong drop. This is not a good day.